He made it very clear that some of the things that Blake was afraid of coming out in court were not things that Wayfarer was actively pursuing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have breaking news in the Justin Baldoni versus Blake Lively court case. A judge has ruled on the protective order. This is a big deal.
Who won? Well, I think it's a bit.
In a jaw-dropping twist, Lively's very own lawyer has unleashed a shocking revelation, what insiders are calling undeniable bribery receipts. These documents, allegedly proving under-the-table payoffs and secret dealings, have sent the A-list actress into full-blown panic mode. Sources say Blake Lively is scrambling behind the scenes, desperately trying to control the fallout as her darkest secrets come to light. This Hollywood star might not be so golden after all. We're talking about accusations of bribing judges and officials, hush money to silence critics, and an all-out effort to keep everything buried. But the evidence is now out in the open, and all signs point directly at Blake Lively. Just how far did she go to secure her fame and fortune? The consequences of these receipts could be devastating, potentially career-ending, even criminal. The stakes have never been higher, and the intrigue is only intensifying. Bribery, betrayal, and deception, it's all unraveling fast. As investigators comb through every detail, they are particularly focused on confidential and attorney's eyes-only portions of discovery material. A Hollywood star caught red-handed? What comes next? Stay tuned as we reveal the jaw-dropping details behind Blake Lively's bribery scandal, a story developing by the minute. You won't want to miss a single twist in this explosive Hollywood nightmare. Blake Lively has created a disaster of her own making. She thought she could stroll into court, throw around fake claims, and walk away without consequences. But she didn't expect people to scrutinize the details of her shaky accusations. Now, her reputation is crumbling so fast that even those still defending her are starting to look foolish. She has turned what could have been a simple dispute into a massive scandal filled with bribery allegations, shady evidence, and desperate attempts to manipulate the system. Every time she tries a new tactic, she looks even more frantic, as if she's willing to do anything to escape the truth. From the very beginning, Blake played the victim. She pointed fingers at Justin Baldoni, insisting he was the villain. She promised she had solid evidence. She swore she had receipts. She assured everyone she could prove he had wronged her in countless ways. But guess what? She couldn't. In fact, it quickly became obvious that she was just saying whatever she thought would earn her sympathy. She made big claims, but when people asked for proof, she couldn't deliver. Instead, she kept changing her story over and over, assuming no one would catch on. At first, she said there was a disturbing dance scene that proved she was forced to do things against her will. She hyped up this clip as some kind of smoking gun. But when the full video was leaked, it showed her dancing around, completely comfortable, smiling the entire time. She didn't look nervous or distressed at all. That's when she came up with a new excuse. Suddenly, she didn't think the dance scene was proof anymore. Now, she blamed Baldoni for not following the script. But legal experts pointed out that acting, by definition, involves pretending to like people on camera if the scene requires it. Her argument sounded absurd, as if she was suing someone for, making her do her job. When that approach failed, she tried another desperate move, padding her court complaint with a ridiculous 180 pages of nonsense. A typical lawsuit of this nature would be around 20 to 25 pages, but hers was so bloated that it read like a full-length novel. It seemed like she believed if she threw every possible accusation onto paper, people would be too overwhelmed to notice how weak her claims really were. But it didn't fool anyone. Lawyers and judges saw it as nothing more than a smokescreen designed to distract from her complete lack of real evidence. Judge Lyman, who had the unfortunate task of dealing with this legal circus, even called it a PR war rather than a legitimate lawsuit. Blake Lively's web of deception is quickly unraveling, and there's no telling how much worse this will get for her. Stay tuned for more updates as this scandal continues to spiral out of control.
Guys, the judge has ruled on Blake Lively's protective order. So Blake Lively was fighting to have a protective order put in place for attorneys' eyes only to protect items that may come up in discovery, presumably the Taylor Swift text message.
He saw right through the drama. He could tell it was all flashy headlines instead of serious legal arguments. Judges are used to seeing stunts in court, but Blake's fiasco took it to a whole new level. She even tried to force the court to hide certain key documents under something called an attorney's eyes only, AEO order, which would ensure that only lawyers could see them. That was a major red flag. Why would she want to hide crucial evidence unless it was extremely damaging to her? But her sneaky plan didn't stop there. People started talking about a staggering $100 million that someone connected to her was supposedly willing to spend just to keep that evidence buried. That sure sounds like a bribe, doesn't it? No normal person says, "We have 100 million reasons to keep this quiet," unless they're talking about using money to change the outcome. Obviously, once people heard that, they knew something shady was going on. If her evidence really proved she was innocent, she wouldn't be trying so hard to make it vanish.
In publishing anything about her security, but did bring up that, you know what? Our addresses got leaked. So that's interesting.
If journalists who thrive on juicy gossip wouldn't touch it, that means it must have been really flimsy. Another sign of her desperation was a ridiculous smear campaign about Baldoni's so-called toxic positivity. Blake's team actually tried to argue that he was too nice to his employees, which somehow made them feel uncomfortable. One of the big examples they gave was that he asked staff to sign emails with so much love. Another was that he filmed himself handing out clothes to homeless people. That might be the strangest attempt ever made to paint someone in a negative light. Criticizing someone for kindness? It's bizarre, and it shows that Blake was running out of real ways to attack him. Meanwhile, all these stories about bribery and hush money started swirling. A lot of people in Hollywood know that big stars sometimes pay to make problems go away, but Blake allegedly took it to an extreme level. Sources even hinted that she brought in ex-CIA agents to manage her PR meltdown. She must be absolutely terrified for her secrets to come out if she's hiring people who usually deal with classified government matters. However, even that hasn't saved her. Her attempts to control the narrative are so sloppy that she keeps getting exposed at every turn. The more she tries to hide, the more obvious it becomes that she has a lot to cover up. Then there's the looming threat of a deposition. That's when Blake would have to sit down under oath and answer questions on camera. If she tells even one lie during that session and the court catches it, her entire testimony could be thrown out. She's already been caught in multiple lies, so facing a deposition could be disastrous for her. That's why some legal experts believe she's going to do whatever it takes to settle this case before she ever has to sit in that chair. Otherwise, she might face total humiliation in court. Blake's meltdown became crystal clear when her own PR firm, Leslie Darty and LPR, tried to distance itself from her. PR firms specialize in cleaning up messes. If a PR firm doesn't want to work with you anymore, that's a huge sign that you're a lost cause. They must have realized that no matter what they tried, Blake's situation was simply unfixable. Now, I don't see this as a loss for Justin because ultimately they still have the right to fight each time. However, the burden is now on them. She had lied too much, faked too many stories, and tangled too many people in her web of falsehoods. They knew they weren't going to come out looking good if they continued helping her. Meanwhile, Ryan Reynolds is apparently part of the behind-the-scenes scheming, trying to keep everything under wraps. He's likely aware that if the public learns all the gritty details, it will harm him as well. The rumor about Taylor Swift's text messages only adds to the suspicion. All right, the judge has ruled on Blake Lively's protective order. Blake was fighting to have a protective order put in place for attorneys' eyes only to protect items that may come up in discovery, presumably the Taylor Swift text messages. Why would they panic about texts between Taylor Swift and Blake? People figure there's something in those messages that points to more manipulation. Maybe Swift was pressured to shape a certain narrative. Maybe she was asked to lie for Blake. Whatever it is, the fact that they don't want it to go public suggests it's damaging. Judge Lyman has expressed frustration, basically telling Blake's team that they can't keep changing the rules just because they're celebrities. And to be clear, Taylor Swift isn't the only high-profile celeb caught up in this. Hugh Jackman appears to be involved, and Bradley Cooper, whom Blake Lively thanked in the credits for It Ends With Us, also seems to be tied to this mess. They filed this lawsuit, stirred up a huge media storm, and now they want the court to hide all the evidence that makes them look bad. But it doesn't work like that. The judge is committed to transparency, especially when someone tries to manipulate the legal system so blatantly. Once the public sees the full story, it's likely that any shred of sympathy for her will vanish. There are a number of high-profile celebrities beyond Blake and Ryan Reynolds who will be dragged into this, and there may be some discovery that connects to them if it hasn't already. The bigger picture is that Blake never seemed to want a fair trial. She wanted to bring everything into the media, ruin Baldoni's reputation, and come out looking like some tragic victim. She counted on public opinion to punish him before the real facts could surface. But when the truth started slipping out, and her so-called evidence began to look fake, her entire plan crumbled. Now, she's trapped in a legal nightmare of her own making. She can't just walk away and say, never mind.
About the medical stuff or the security stuff, they agreed even in that call. That's not what this is about. What this became about was more of this sort of mid-ground issue.
Another was that he filmed himself. The judge has ruled that while high-profile third parties who aren't directly involved in the lawsuit deserve some privacy, that doesn't mean she's off the hook. Baldoni has no reason to back down, and the court isn't buying her attempts to manipulate the system. Another telling sign? Multiple journalists outright refused to publish some of her claims because they found them too unreliable. Normally, reporters jump at the chance to break a Hollywood scandal. It draws readers. But for them to say, no, we're not touching, this means they saw zero proof behind her accusations. Because of that, much of this information will likely be classified under an attorney's eyes only order. This lack of media support highlights just how weak her case is. People also noticed that when her lawsuit started going south, she ran to the California Civil Rights Division, CRD, to file another complaint. It looked like she was desperately throwing more logs on the fire to keep her victim narrative alive. But even that move fell flat, especially since she had no solid argument. That means certain details will have to be kept confidential, shared only with attorneys, and most certainly won't be leaking to the public. At this point, she's just stacking fluff on top of her already bloated claims. But the judge isn't blind. He sees exactly what's happening. She's trying to keep the spotlight on Baldoni while concealing her own lies and manipulations. The most laughable part? She attempted to turn the lawsuit into a massive 180-page document, as if sheer length could trick people into believing she had a real case. But lawyers who reviewed it said it was nothing more than a media stunt, filled with drama meant to grab attention rather than legitimate legal arguments. If there's anything directly related to the lawsuit or the claims made by either party, it can be brought up in court. But all the theatrics in the world won't change the fact that her case is crumbling. And everyone can see it. In discovery, certain information may be shared with the clients, meaning leaks could still happen. But at this point, it's starting to feel like a poorly written script, one that mistakes sheer length for credibility. Piling up pages doesn't make something more believable. Then there's the issue of those hidden text messages. Blake claims they need to stay sealed because their release could cause irreparable harm. But the only real damage here is to her reputation. When people realize she's been lying, the judge reminded her that the public has a right to transparency, especially when it looks like a celebrity is trying to twist the law to their advantage. If you step into the legal arena, you can't just run away when things don't go your way. Word in Hollywood is that she's burned so many bridges that no one wants to work with her anymore. She's proven she'll do anything, even fabricate stories to ruin someone's career. That's not the kind of reputation anyone wants in an industry built on relationships and appearances. If she's willing to spin lies about Baldoni, what's stopping her from doing the same to others? It's a massive red flag that screams, beware. This person cannot be trusted.
Medical records being revealed, and it seemed very evident that her lawyers were instructed to ensure that her celebrity relationships, third party, all that stuff was off the table.
This Hollywood star might not. Meanwhile, Baldoni's side is simply doing one thing, presenting proof that Blake's claims don't hold up. They've pointed out her contradictions, false statements, and over-the-top accusations. Then there's the leaked Ari Emanuel audio, which suggests Baldoni wasn't blacklisted for any wrongdoing, but because Blake and her allies orchestrated it. That alone tells you who the real villain is, the one who pulls shady backroom deals to destroy someone else's career. The more truth that comes out, the worse she looks. Now, her last-ditch effort appears to be bribery. The rumor about a $100 million offer to bury certain files isn't just a small suggestion, it's a flashing neon sign that says there is something in those documents that could ruin her completely. She's trying to throw money at the problem, hoping to make it disappear. But that's not how justice is supposed to work. If a judge allowed it, it would be a disgusting display of corruption. Fortunately, Judge Lyman seems determined to hold the line and not let her get away with it. And so here we are. Blake's entire fiasco has become a complete joke. She tried to smear Baldoni with wild accusations, played the victim, filed a ridiculous lawsuit, lied about a dance scene, attempted to hide evidence, threw around hush money, and even brought in ex-CIA agents to clean up her public image. And yet, none of it has worked. She's only made herself look like a shameless liar. At this point, most people believe this will either end with her losing in spectacular fashion at trial or settling behind closed doors to avoid public humiliation. But even if she settles, it won't undo the damage. Her reputation is already in ruins. A settlement won't erase the fact that she tried to bribe a court or that she presented fake evidence. No matter which way she turns, this is a disaster entirely of her own making. Meanwhile, there's talk of Ryan Reynolds scrambling behind the scenes, desperate to salvage what's left of their once golden public image. He spent years crafting his reputation as Hollywood's fun, charming guy. Now, he's tangled up in one of the biggest celebrity scandals in recent memory. People are starting to wonder, was he involved in the manipulations and payoffs too? Even if Ryan Reynolds wasn't fully involved, his name is now tied to Blake's meltdown, and that won't do him any favors in the long run. People are also raising eyebrows at Taylor Swift's involvement. If Blake and Ryan are panicking over those messages, it likely means they're afraid of something that could make them look even more guilty. Maybe they were bragging about how they could manipulate the media, or perhaps they were mocking the legal system. The simple fact that they don't want those messages out is enough for many to suspect they're hiding something. The fiasco has become so massive that even mainstream outlets can't ignore it. However, it's also so obviously built on falsehoods that many journalists aren't taking Blake's side. Instead, they're focusing on how major celebrities attempt to manipulate the courts and the press for personal gain. It's a prime example of how celebrity status can backfire. Once a star is exposed for lying on such a grand scale, the public turns against them. No one likes being played, especially by someone who thinks fame gives them the right to twist the truth. Meanwhile, Baldoni's legal team is calmly dismantling Blake's claims, showing that every part of her complaint is either contradictory or baseless. They don't need flashy PR stunts because the facts speak for themselves. She made too many mistakes, changed her story too often, and got caught too many times. At this point, it's practically a slam dunk for Baldoni, who looks poised to clear his name completely.